Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, when Sophie Lane, a struggling single mother, took a job as a live-in maid at the lavish estate of Adrian Cole, young and charming millionaire, she promised herself she would keep her personal life separate from her work. But when her babysitter cancelled at the last minute, Sophie had no choice but to bring her infant son, Noah, to the mansion. She expected disapproval, maybe even the risk of losing her job. What she didn't expect was to see Adrian's expression soften the moment he held Noah in his arms, or for that single act to set off a chain of events that would change all of their lives forever. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. Most mornings, the office felt like a cold, polished place where smiles were rare and every step echoed against the marble floors. But that day was different. From the moment Emily walked in, balancing her little daughter on one hip and holding a folder in her other hand, there was a quiet stir among her co-workers. Emily wasn't the kind of person who liked to bring attention to herself. She had always tried to keep her personal life separate from her job, but circumstances had left her with no choice. Her babysitter had called in sick at the last minute, and Emily couldn't afford to take another day off. Her bills were already piling up, and missing work wasn't an option. That's so. She had made the decision her baby would come with her to the office. She thought she could manage, just for a day. The little one, dressed in a soft pink sweater, seemed calm at first, blinking curiously at the bright lights and tapping tiny fingers against Emily's arm. She slipped quietly into her cubicle, hoping no one important would notice, but fate had other plans. Her boss, Alexander Reed, the tall, impeccably dressed Millionaire CEO, happened to walk by. He was known for his sharp eye and even sharper words. Emily braced herself for the lecture she knew was coming. Alexander's gaze fell on her, then on the baby. He slowed his steps, his expression unreadable. Everyone nearby froze, waiting for his reaction. And then, if you want, I can continue. This expansion so the tension builds toward tea that had occurred in his life, which had been neatly organized. It was late in the afternoon when she arrived to collect Oliver and take him away, and Ethan was hesitant to hand him back and leave, as Mia was at a loss for words to respond to the peculiar circumstance. She expressed her gratitude for the day. I assure you that it will not occur again. Reliable childcare will be found by Meffa an instant. Ethan looked intently at her face, and if you are unable to, there was a question that lingered between them, and neither of them was prepared to answer it since it was weighted with ramifications. Mia gave a resolute response. I'll figure something out. Despite the fact that she was struggling with uncertainty while she was leaving the penthouse with Oliver cuddled up against her chest, she was unable to remove the image of Ethan's face as he had held her son. It was the face of Armin, who was haunted by ghosts that she was unable to see, but whose presence she had felt in every corner of his lovely empty home since Mia had brought Oliver to work on that particular day. 3 weeks had gone. Furthermore, to her ongoing astonishment, Ethan had agreed to let her continue to bring him as well. There was very little discussion that led to the formation of the arrangement. Mia would arrive with Oliver every morning, and Ethan would keep an eye on him while he was doing things like examining paperwork or participating in conference calls. During the times that Ethan had appointments outside of the penthouse, Mia would let Oliver accompany her as she cleaned. The routine was successful in some way. Ethan, who had a reputation for being chilly, had acclimated to the presence of the baby a surprising ease, and Oliver appeared to be content in the peaceful luxury of the apartment. Mia was getting ready to leave after a long day, and she was in the process of packing Oliver's belongings on this particular evening. During her lunch break, she received a phone call from the apartment management. A further hike in rent was on the horizon. While she was folding Oliver's blanket, she felt the weight of the news crushing down on her shoulders. Sound of Ethan's voice coming from the doorway caused her to jump immediately. You're distracted today, she automatically responded. I'm fine, Mr. Carter. While tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, Ethan observed her with that penetrating glance that seems to see straight through whatever pretenses she could be putting on. There had been a change in the chemistry between them in the weeks that had passed since Oliver had moved into his house. There was an implicit understanding between the employer and the employee, but the ridge between the two parties continued to exist. I was wondering how much your rent is, he inquired in a sudden. Mia became tense. May I be excused? You pay rent? The phrase was repeated by Ethan when he entered the room. To what extent do you pay? On the contrary. After beginning, Mia took a deep breath. Next month it will be increased. An increase of 15%. A small tightening of Ethan's jaw occurred. Also, are you able to Mia felt the surge of pride in her chest. She posed her shoulders in a straight line. I am able to handle it. Are you able to? The tone of Ethan's challenge was more subdued than the words. He used nearly every day you are putting in extra hours of labor, except for these windows. Oliver is only able to catch a glimpse of daylight while Mia was preoccupied with Oliver's diaper bag. She turned her back on him. She wanted nothing more than to be exposed and defenseless in front of her employer, and she detested the fact that Ethan had noticed her struggle in his Sullivan building. Ethan said in a tone that was carefully neutral, I have an empty apartment downtown. I have a Sullivan building. It has been a month since the prior tenant moved out, and I have not yet offered for rent. Mia cast a suspicious peek upward. Is that what you are saying? Until you are able to get back on your feet, stand there. 6 months of rent-free living. The offering lunged in the air between the two of them. Mia fixed her gaze on his, examining his face like she was looking for a secret. Why would you choose to act in such a manner? Ethan's response was very straightforward. Because you are a good employee. His countenance did not reveal anything. Locating trustworthy stances. A challenging task once again. Mia's pride blossomed. For the record, Mr. Carter, I am not looking for a handout. In response he stated, I am not offering one. Hesitated, then said in a more subdued tone, I'm giving Oliver a place to be safe. When he said this, he was proposing an agreement that would be beneficial to all parties. As soon as Mia heard the name of her son, her determination began to weaken. It was a building with uncertain security, sporadic hot water, and neighbors who battled loudly at all hours of the night. She could hardly afford the apartment that was located in Thought Building. Oliver was deserving of better. She continued to be hesitant. That doesn't sit well with me. Taking a pragmatic approach, Ethan suggested that you consider it to be an extension of your remuneration package. There are a lot of CEOs who get housing allowances, in contrast to being an executive. I am a housekeeper, as Mia pointed out. The corners of Ethan's mouth seemed to twitch in what may have been the specter of a smile. Then you should think of it as an investment in the retention of employees. Sudden, delighted gurgle that Oliver let out, which drew both of their attention, came from the fact that he had been peacefully playing on his blanket. The expression on Ethan's face softened as he looked at the baby, and there it was once again, that glimmer of something more found and intricate than his professional character permitted. After observing him, Mia began to formulate a question that she had never before had the courage to ask. Are we talking about? And I hear maybe it has something else to do with it. The forcefulness with which she posed her query appeared to take Ethan by surprise. Before he was able to regain his composure, the carefully created mask was temporarily removed, allowing a glimpse of the raw emotion that he was experiencing all along. Is it still relevant? It was a quiet question. Maybe it did, but Mia couldn't say for sure why it did. Her son deserved stability, and she was aware that her own tiredness was becoming dangerous. This was something that she was aware of the day before. Yesterday's was giving Oliver a bath and came dangerously close to falling asleep after a lengthy delay. She finally mentioned the apartment. Is it possible for me to view it first? Ethan gave a slight nod. Your transportation will be provided by my driver tomorrow afternoon. On top of that, there are no conditions attached, to be clear. Mia needed to be. A resolute response was given by Ethan. Your employment conditions have not changed in any way. You tend to stick to your regular routine for a period of 6 months. The apartment is yours. After Thato will conduct a revaluation. Mia has the self-awareness to decline, but Osh accepted such a huge favor from her company. She violated the boundaries of her working life. Nevertheless, the decision became more apparent to her once she looked at Oliver. Okay, she said at long last, but just for a period of 6 months, and I promise that I will repay you in the future. That is not going to bear. Mia was adamant that it be up to me. Ethan gave her a brief period of observance. After that, a nod was given. As you would like it. It was impossible for Mia to shake the feeling that she was missing something significant. As she gathered Oliver and their belongings in preparation for their departure, there was no evidence that Ethan Carter was a charitable person within the realm of business. He was known for his ruthless efficiency and exceptional strategic thinking. So what action did he take at this point, and what was it about this arrangement that made him feel as though it mattered more to him than he was willing to recognize? There was nothing that Mia's present flat lacked in comparison to the Sullivan building. It is safe, it is clean, and it is flooded with organic light. There were 2 bedrooms in the apartment that Ethan had offered, and it was located on the 10th floor. The windows of the apartment looked out over a small park. Mia, who had become accustomed to her tiny walk-up apartment, felt as though she was living in a palace, despite the fact that it was not one of the premium units that the building was known for. As James, Ethan's driver, took her on a tour of the Aresh, remarked that this was significantly more than she had anticipated. The fact that you might say that was brought up by Mr. Carter And James responded with a knowing smile. To let you know that it is the tiniest unit in the building, he said, to tell you it is possible that this is the case nonetheless. Mia's throat tightened with an unexpected emotion as she took in the shining kitchen appliances, the bathtub that was large enough to actually soak in, and the second bedroom where Oliver could have his own space. It was over the weekend that she and Oliver moved in, although Ethan did not assist with the relocation, did send movers to transfer her few items. He did this in order to maintain a professional distance. The gesture, which was similar to a number of others that he had made in recent times, caused Mia to be perplexed about the dynamic nature of their relationship. The work resumed as usual, but Mia arrived from a built-in thought. Ethan owned she had slept better than she had in months, despite the fact that she had been away from her mother. Oliver appeared to be happier as well, flourishing in the setting that was clean and calm. During the weeks that passed, Ethan began to spend more time at the penthouse during the hours that Mia was working. Instead of taking video calls in his office, he started doing so in the living room so that Oliver could play in close proximity to him in order to avoid Mia having to inquire about it. He arranged meetings to coincide with Oliver's nap time. The accumulation of insignificant moments like snowflakes led to the formation of something that neither of them. Mia seeing that Ethan hadn't eaten and providing a simple lunch for him. Ethan remembering Oliver's 4-eyed toy, and Mia understanding how Ethan drank his coffee. Ethan's assistance was necessary as Oliver began to experience what is known as teething. While Oliver was in his 7th month, a more significant change occurred in the situation. When Mia arrived at work, she saw that Ethan appeared to be unusually exhausted, with his normally flawless attire becoming slightly disheveled. This was a rough night, she asked as she put her belongings down. As he responded, he continued to stare at the screen of his laptop. The Tokyo deal fell through. There was a waste of 6 months worth of labor. Mia showed sympathetic nods and continued with her morning routine, allowing him some space in the process. Afterwards, she discovered him in the kitchen, where he was staring out window with his coffee still unfinished next to him. As soon as he became aware of her, he made an unexpected statement. It's not just the deal. On this day, Emily would have celebrated her birthday. Emily was a name that lingered in the air between them. It was a name that Mia had never heard anybody else speak before. Who is your wife? With caution, she ventured forthwith. His teeth clenched. Ethan gave a single nod. She would have been 38 years old. Mia put the laundry basket Thatch had been holding down on the ground. Would you like to have a conversation about her? She was under the impression that he would decline, withdrawing behind his wall of professionalism for a little period. Rather than that, he moved to the living room, picked up his coffee mug, and moved there, therefore sending a tacit invitation to her to follow him. At that moment, Oliver was dozing off, and Theminator displayed his serene face while Mia sat opposite Ethan. She was acutely aware of the significance of whatever it was that he was about to reveal. I had been married to Emily for a period of 4 years. His voice exerted authority in ways that I was never able to be. She was a superb pediatric surgeon who was also compassionate. As he spoke, Mia as he described a woman who had a strong desire to have at least 3 children, who was passionate about with donors over hospital financing, and who enjoyed going on hikes in the rain. According to Ethan, what continued, his eyes were riveted on something in the distance. We had been trying for quite some time when she finally became pregnant. When his voice began to falter slightly, she was 7 months along in her pregnancy. It was not without its difficulties. Emily and our baby were both taken from us in the same night. We were both gone. Their relationship became more stable as a result of his disclosure. All of a sudden, his response to Oliver made perfect sense. The concern, the yearning, and the agony that he felt in his eyes when he believed that no one was observing him. Mia sobbed in a low voice. I am so sorry. Can you tell me the name of your daughter? In response, Ethan said Lily, a single word that was weighted with sorrow. We had planned on giving her the name Lily. A brief minute of quiet was observed by them. As Ethan straightened his back in his seat, it appeared as though he had recalled himself. Let me apologize. It is not proper for one to have this conversation with so between what in a soft voice. Mia interrupted. Who is the employer and who is the employee? Perhaps it is simply not appropriate for Ethan Carter to demonstrate that he is a human being. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, perhaps astonishment at her audacity. Is an order. Mia went on to explain how you had been keeping an eye on my son for several months. You provided us with a place to call home. You agree with me that we have gone beyond the simply professional level. When Oliver woke up from his slumber, the monitor showed him doing so in order to get him. Mia stood up and paused next to Ethan's chair. She did it on the spur of the moment, placing a hand softly on his shoulder. I am appreciative of you informing me about these. The following evening, Mia sat with on the rooftop balcony where he was drinking a glass of whiskey. This occurred after she had put Oliver Toeslip in his new room. The lights of the city spread out below them like stars that have fallen. He pointed to the chair next to him and asked, "Would you like to join me?" Mia was finally able to voice the question that had been bothering her for a long time as they sat together, outdoors in the fresh night air. "When did you decide to do all of this time? It's truth. It is because Ethan had been silent for such a long time." She was concerned that he would not respond up and doing, so his voice was unfiltered and full of sincerity. "Initially, Oliver brought to my mind the things that I had lost," he said. Now, however, he focused his gaze on her, his visage revealing a sense of vulnerability for me. "He serves as a reminder of what life might still be like." Mia experienced a change in the emotional connection between them, a recognition of feelings that neither of them had been prepared to name. However, as the warmth began to develop in her chest, a shade of uncertainty followed. Is it possible that Ethan was assessing her and Oliver as a means to heal old wounds, a substitute for the familiar that he had missed out on? Alternatively, was there something more genuine that was developing between them during the time that they were sitting together beneath the huge night sky? The question was not addressed. The future was as soon explored as the stars that were up above them. The headline was glaring at Mia from the screen of her phone. Who is the mysterious family of billionaire Ethan Carter? There was a grainy photograph showing Ethan holding Olivares. They entered the Sullivan building with Mia following slightly behind them. The photograph was located underneath. Itch was scrolling through the article with her hands shaking as she did so. A heartbroken widower, a much younger housekeeper, a loaf child, and the act of bringing her into his property were all words that immediately came to her mind. The narrative was a poisonous mixture of half-truths and blatant lies, portraying her as a planned wealth digger who had positioned herself and her child as substitute family for the real estate billionaire who was still grieving Mayoas, experiencing nausea. Specifically, her name was stated in the paper, and Thellaville of the Sullivan building where she resided was also noted. A few paragraphs of gossip that was passed off as newsware responsible for the violation of her privacy, her reputation, and her dignity. When she received a text message from a former co-worker containing the link, she inquired as to whether or not the article was accurate. A total of 3 additional people had reached out to her by the time she arrived at the penthouse that morning, among them was her sister, who was located in Chicago upon her arrival. Ethan was engaged in a conversation on the phone, his back tight with stress as he paced around the living room. Mia was able to tell that he had also read the article based on his abrupt tone. He was saying, "I don't care what it takes," with a tone that was icy and harsh, displaying a controlled anger. "First you should determine who was responsible for leaking her address, then you should contact Reynolds at the Chronicle. By the end of the day, I would like a retraction." As soon as he noticed Mia, he terminated the conversation, his countenance becoming even more gloomy as he observed the distress that was visible on her face. As opposed to asking, he indicated that you had already seen it. Indeed, Mia carefully placed Oliver's carrier inside the vehicle. All throughout the morning my phone has been vibrating non-stop. Ethan ran his hand through his hair, a move that she became familiar with as one of the few indicators that he used to communicate when he was truly distressed. In a tense tone, he referred to himself as Victor Chen, a former partner in business. "There was a disagreement between us the previous year, and ever since then he has been looking for ways to undermine me." "Is this what you mean, a vengeance in business?" Despite her best efforts to maintain her composure, Mia's voice lifted as she inquired, "My son, are you going to use my life to get revenge on me?" Even as he reached for his phone once more, Ethan reassured her that he would soon fix the problem. "A statement is currently being drafted by my public relations team. In addition to making it very obvious that you are an employee, we will also make it plain that the housing arrangement is merely a component of your salary." The words that he spoke caused Mia to hesitate for a moment. "Is that true of who I am? How about a mere worker?" Ethan came to a halt, taken aback by the question that was asked. As he looked into her eyes, the high-octane problem-solving energy that had been emanating from him began to slow down. "May I ask what you mean? It is clear to you what I am referring to." Mia moved closer to Oliver, who was now sound asleep after being transported in his carrier. "Our relationship has been more than just that of employer and employee for the past few months. My youngster is the recipient of your time. You shared with me the story of Emily and Lily. Some evenings after Oliver has gone to sleep, we sit and speak for hours." The look on Ethan's face remained unflanced and uninterested. "We've developed a friendship." As Mia Patetti's term friends, she felt that it was insufficient. Is that all there is between them? The question hung in the air. The city maintained its frenetic pace outside the windows of Thiepenhaus, but within time seemed to stand still as they confronted a moment of reality that neither of them had been prepared to face. Mia, what is it that you would like me to say in the end? Ethan inquired, his tone of voice becoming more intimate and softer than his usual business tone. Simply put, she responded with the truth. Could they be wrong, that is to say, the tabloids? How about us? Do you have a house? When Ethan did not respond right away, Mia was able to find the answer she was looking for in his hesitancy. Do I matter to you in any way? Having a strong want to hear it pronounced, she urged. On the other hand, are we only filling a gap in your life? It was a question that touched a nerve. Ethan made a tiny turn away from the window, his profile standing out against the bright morning light that was coming in through the windows. When it was eventually his turn to speak, his tone was deliberate and measured. Obviously, I'm concerned about both you and Oliver, but prompted, recognizing the qualification that was not being expressed. There was an excessively extended pause from Ethan. Mia felt a harsh clarity come upon her as the silence continued through his eyes. She was able to see herself, the young woman who was raising her child alone and who had suddenly emerged in his world, bringing with her both chaos and vitality as well as reminders of everything he had lost. Oliver, a second opportunity at fatherhood that had been taken away from him, was what she saw when she saw Olivia. Moreover, she observed something else, the inability of Ethan to differentiate between his growing affections for them and his unresolved sadness is a problem. Cha spoke in a low voice. You are not ready. The realization was terrible, but it was obvious. You're concerned about us, but you are unsure if it is because of who we are or what we stand for. You are not correct. Mia, do you agree? She interrupted him in a gentle manner. Is it possible that you see the child that you have lost when you look at Oliver? Are you making an effort to be the kind of man that Emmelined you to be when you assist me? The look on Ethan's face verified what she had been afraid of, neither with rage nor with denial, but rather with a momentary astonishment at her understanding, which was then followed by a reluctance to acknowledge the reality. In a low whisper, Mia said, I will not be your second chance. The corners of her eyes were beginning to show signs of tears. Furthermore, I will not allow Oliver to take Lily's place in my life. She gathered her luggage, and the carrier that she had for her son. Time is what I acquire. There will be a few days off for me. Where do you intend to go? In a tight tone, Ethan asked the question. The apartment for the time being, Mia responded. She paused for a moment before continuing. I have no idea what will happen next. At the very least, allow me to assist you with this media scenario. As Ethan approached her, he made a statement. Please allow me to shield you from that one time. Mia acknowledged that much by nodding her head. However, the rest of us, whatever it is, must wait until you have a clear understanding of what it is that you truly desire. Ethan called after her as she made her way into the elevator of the building. What if I am already aware of it? Mia shifted her gaze, and her eyes met his as they crossed the vast width of the penthouse foyer. Then you must demonstrate it, in terms of residences, financial stability, or finding solutions to my difficulties. Nothing. You may demonstrate this by figuring out who you are without the specters of your past standing in the way of our relationship. They became physically separated as the elevator doors shut. Mia allowed the tears to fall as it dropped, not knowing whether or not she had just walked away from something that had the potential to be quite beautiful. Another possibility is that she may have prevented herself and Oliver from being substitutes in a life was built on sorrow rather than love. Ethan stood immobile behind her in the penthouse, which had suddenly felt more empty than it had in months. He was confronted with a truth that he had not been prepared to face. It had been 3 weeks since Mia had left Ethan's penthouse. The last time she had left, he had, as he had promised, dealt with the matter with the media. A formal statement had been issued, which clarified her position as an employee. This was followed by letters to outlets that perpetuated the conjecture, requesting that they stop spreading information about her. After what was supposed to have been a meeting with Ethan's attorneys, Victor Chen had vanished from the gossip columns forever. However, the private suffering continued even after the public interest had subsided. While Mia remained to reside in the apartment in the Sullivan building, she made use of the vacation days she had ached in order to delay going back to work. She contemplated the possibility of seeking for a different profession, one that would guarantee sufficient financial support for both her and Oliver, but would not involve the delicate emotional lentings that her current work now entailed. Each day she anticipated receiving a phone call or a visit from Ethan. The silence became longer with each passing day, until the day when a simple envelope was delivered to her via slots in her mail slot. You could find a key and a note written by hand inside. It is still possible for you to keep your employment. If this is not the case, the apartment will continue to be yours for the full 6 months. As agreed upon, there are no conditions, i.e., no emotional appeal here. There is no spectacular gesture. It was just a subtle confirmation that her decision was significant. That afternoon, a second envelope was sent to someone Mia served as trustee of the trust until Oliver became 21 years old, and the documents contained in this one transferred the wellness of her flat to a trust that had been established in Oliver's name. In a letter that accompanied the document, Ethan's attorney noted that the trust would be responsible for paying all of the property taxes and maintenance payments required. The documents were strewn out in front of Mia as she sat on her sofa, and she was astounded by what they represented. Freedom in addition to financial security. Was the goal freedom to decide whether or not to go back to Ethan depending on one's sentiments rather than on their requirement to do? So that evening she called her sister and detailed all that had happened. "All right, let me get this straight," Jenny stated when she had finished listening to the entire convoluted conversation. "Your boss, who is worth $1 billion, fell in love with you and your child became envious when the press discovered this, bestowed upon you an apartment and then vanished us." Mia saw Oliver engage in his activity. She groaned and thought to herself, "That's not exactly how it happened, according to Matt. I was the one who left the room. My message to him was that Honey did to determine whether he cared for us because of who we are or because we brought back memories of what he had lost, and now he is allowing you some time to make a decision. I suppose that is the case. The question is," as Jenny asked Maya in a soft voice, "what is it that you want?" After they had hung up, question continued to bother them. To what end did she seek? There is protection for Oliver, absolutely. Ethan, however, had already provided that, and he had not asked for anything in return. It is a job. One more could be found by her. It is a relationship. Had that been Thackus of the growing distance between them when Ethan talked of Emily and Lily's thought about the expression on his face, which was still a sign of unresolved pain. Even after 5 years, Wench thought back to the first time he had held Oliver. She recalled the way that something awakened within him. She recalled the peaceful evenings spent on the balcony, the conversations that flowed easily between them and Thagridgel. Softening of his countenance whenever he looked at her. Could it have been a glimpse into his past, or could it have been the beginning of something new? Ethan, on the other hand, was undergoing his own personal transformations across town. He did not rush into work in an attempt to escape the anguish he was experiencing for the first time since the death of his family. Instead, he faced it. Everything between him and Mia had changed, beginning with Emily's birthday, which was the day that everything changed. He paid a visit to Tuth Cemetery, where he placed FL flowers on the graves that he had avoided for an excessive amount of time and spoke words that he had kept hidden from others. He looked through the boxes of memories that he had stashed away, touching things like photographs, infant outfits, and wedding albums throughout the process. During the first time in years that hushed tears. It was not the controlled private anguish that he had allowed himself to experience. Rather, it was profound cleansing sobs that left him feeling drained and somehow lighter. At his place of employment, he surprised his executive team by announcing that he would be withdrawing from day-to-day operations. "It is time for someone else to take charge of the day-to-day operations," he informed them, "but I will continue to be involved in strategic decision-making." Margaret, who had been his assistant for 8 years, discovered him emptying up his disc and hesitated in the doorway as she did so. "Are you about to pass away?" It was a direct question, although it was a sound that was so uncommon in the workplace. Ethan laughed, which caused Margaret's eyebrows to rise in fear. He reassured her that this was not the casting to live as my goal. One of the things he did was spend time getting back in touch with old acquaintances under Viviv, who had known him before the pain of loss had turned him into the person he had become. He paid a visit to his parents, who had been secretly concerned about him for more than a decade. He volunteered at a children's hospital, paying tribute to Emily's memory in a manner that he ought to have done a long time ago. He thought about Mia and Oliver not as replacements for what he had lost, but as people who had demonstrated to him that his heart was still capable of growing. It had been 1 month since Mia had left the penthouse. Ethan got a text message from her. "There will be a return to work for me tomorrow. I'll be out of the office." Wasted, straightforward response. He gave James will open the door for you. I made a conscious decision to do so. It was impossible for him to sway her decision or make her feel uneasy. Because he would not be present, she would be able to rent her the penthouse on her own terms if she so desired. The following evening, Ethan was seen sitting on a seat in the tiny park that was visible from the window of Oliver's nursery. Not only did he not want to approach them, but he also did not anticipate that Mia would even happen to be there. It was sufficient for him to be in close proximity in order to sit with his thoughts and the choices that he had made when he looked out through of the 10th floor he saw a woman standing there. It was Mia, who was holding Oliver, and she was staring down at the park. He was unable to determine whether or not she had seen him. Seated there, she remained there for a considerable amount of time, before turning away the light that was shining through the window, continuing to shine like a beacon in the growing darkness. Meanwhile, Ethan stayed seated on the bench and observed the light. Over the course of many years he had been attempting to escape his history by constructing walls around his heart and employing his empire as a sanctuary against emotion. After that, Mia and Lover had made their appearance, bringing chaos, warmth, and vitality into his world, which he had carefully regulated. There was a choice for him to make at this moment. He could either go back inside the security of his walls, or he could take a step forward into the unknown with no guarantees, other than knowledge that he was finally prepared to live again. When Mia arrived at the penthouse the following morning, she saw a little package sitting on her desk. A note with an address was found inside, and it was not the cemetery as had half expected. Rather, it was a playground in Central Park at the bottom. The note, which was written in Ethan's precise handwriting, was the time. Noon. There are no guarantees or fairy tales. Nothing but a choice. Parents were grouped on benches with coffee cups and watchful eyes, some of them engaged in discussion while others were concentrated on their phones. Their playground was bustling with activity, with children climbing, swinging, and lowering their voices. Rose and fell like music. It was precisely noon when Maya arrived with Oliver securely fastened to her bosom. In his carrier she looked about, unsure of what to anticipate from the situation. Her momentary pause was brought on by the sight of Ethan, which she had just seen. She had never seen him wear the clothes that he was wearing, which consisted of jeans and a simple grey sweater. He was sitting by himself on a bench at the edge of the playground. Tailored suit and polished demeanor that Ethan Carter, the real estate billionaire, had been wearing was no longer present as he watched the children play. This man appeared accessible and somewhat common, however the intensity of his gaze was something that was very familiar to him still. He hadn't taken note of her. Maya deliberately paused for a bit to observe him in order to calm her beating heart, even though she had practiced what she was going to say a dozen times on the way over. All of her phrases that she had practiced vanished when she finally saw him. At that moment Ethan raised his head and his eyes met hers. As they looked further away, he didn't do anything to go closer to her. He didn't wave or shout out to her. He just waited, giving her the opportunity to make her own decision. Mia approached him with measured steps, moving carefully in his direction. At the same time as his little hands were grabbing at her scarf, Oliver gurgled on her chest. Ethan greeted her with a voice that conveyed a sense of both conviction and astonishment. "You came," he murmured when she finally reached him. Mia responded by saying that she found your note intriguing while she was sitting next to him with sufficient distance between them for comfort. "Why are we here?" He made a motion in the direction of the playground. "From time to time, Emily and May, I would make our way here where we would observe the families and speculate about our own future." He hesitated, his eyes remaining fixed on the youngsters who were playing ever since she passed away. "I have not returned." Mia took in this information and finally saw its relevance. "And what about today?" He addressed it in a straightforward manner. "Today, I needed to be here not only to remember, but also to see it differently." After that he turned his blue eyes toward her, and they were clear and direct with fresh eyes. A silence settled between them, which was not uncomfortable, but was weighted with everything that had been left unsaid. When Oliver began to wriggle in his carrier, Mia made some little adjustments to him. "Could I please?" With a small gesture toward the infant Ethan inquired. Mia did not hesitate for more than a few seconds before she delicately unfastened the carrier and transferred Oliver to Ethan's arms, which were waiting for him. Ethan's face was grabbed for by the infant, a move that had become commonplace between the two of them. The infant's eyes were bright and curious as they peered up at him. By looking down at Oliver with a smile, Ethan noticed that he had grown within a month's time. Mia explained that quickened, unrelenting transformation is something that babies do. Ethan gave a serious nod, conveying his thoughts. "Just like you. I've been making some adjustments." When she asked him about the past month, he told her a booth visits to the cemetery, the unpacking of the boxes of memories, and the reorganization of his company. He spoke with a newfound quiet openness, his words unguarded in a way that they had never been before. He spoke with a newfound humility. He stated that I needed to confront my history in order to not only move on from it but also to honor it in the appropriate manner. Their attention was momentarily captured by the ecstatic cry that emanated from the playground, which was made by a child. As soon as Ethan spoke once more, his tone became more subdued. "When it comes to the reasons why I was initially pulled toward you and Oliver, you were absolutely correct." Mia felt a minor level of tension in her body as she read it herself. For the confirmation of what she had feared, however, it was not the end of things, Ethan said, drawing her attention to himself. It was at some point in time that it shifted from being about what I had lost to being about who you were. Both of you taking a quick peek down, he noticed that Oliver had grabbed his finger with an unexpected Amanda forced this young boy who has such a curious and inquisitive outlook on the world. You, on the other hand, were obstinate, arrogant, and compassionate. In fact, you were nothing like Emily. His eyes returned to Mia's face in spite of herself. Mia couldn't help but smile when she heard the sincerity in his voice. Is that a compliment to them? Without any doubt, Ethan said that it was the highest MIA. You are not a substitute replacement. Revelation that you are the heir that they shared was altered as a result of the words that settled between them. Maya did a thorough examination of his face, searching for any indication of the perfectly controlled businessman she had initially encountered. On the contrary, she discovered only Ethan. Even while Itis still serious and thoughtful, it is somehow more present and more alive. And what happens after that? She inquired about it. This was something that Ethan thought about as he softly stroked Oliver's little hand with his thumb. Depending on what it is that you look for. What I long for, Mia said in a leisurely manner. I am concerned about safety. With a house comes a brighter future. In a gentle manner, Ethan pointed out that you already possess those things. His apartment is located here regardless of whether or not you come back. Your job is safe. The future is entirely up to you to shape it. Was accurate. He led her to make her own decision without imposing any constraints or obligations on her. Ethan, what is it that you want? In a manner that redirected the inquiry onto him, she asked. During that little period of silence, he was concentrating on his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice had a sense of assurance that she had not previously encountered. I want to be a part of your lives, not because you F a hole or cure a wound, but because knowing you, both of you, has made me want to be completely alive again. I want to be a part of everything that you do. After a brief pause, he continued, but only if that is what you want. So as well. Mia instantly reached out to smooth Oliver's delicate hair. After discovering that Eth had been ruffled by a gentle breeze while she was doing this, her hand came into contact with Ethan's. A flitting tuck that caused a sensation of warmth to spread up her arm. In her admission, she stated, I have no idea what that looks like. We are the future. They're a difficult situation. Ethan acknowledged that. Life is typically like that, but I'm not asking for any guarantees or assurances. I'm simply hoping for the opportunity to find out together. Mia reflected on the preceding few months, particularly the gradual changes that had taken place in Ethan, the unexpected sensations that had developed within her own heart, and the manner which Oliver seems to blossom when Ethan was there. She pondered the concept of second chances and fresh starts, as well as the decisions that were made out of freedom rather than out of need. In the end, she stated that we must take things slowly, one day at a time. There was a sense of respect and something more profound in Ethan's eyes as he nodded. Every day on it a time. At that same time, Oliver decided to give out a joyful gurgle while simultaneously reaching up toward each of them with his teeny tiny fingers clawing at the air. Mia began to approach closer to the bench without giving it any thought, thereby reducing the cautious distance that she had been maintaining as the three of them sat together under the warm spring sun, surrounded by the sounds of children playing and life continuing its never-ending cycle. Mia came to the realization that they were already beginning something. It was not a fairy tale, it was not a replacement family, and it was not a second chance at dreams that had been lost. Rather, it was something completely new, something that was unique to them. Do you feel like for a stroll for a while? The question was posed by Ethan, who indicated the path that wound its way through the park uncomplicatedly. Mia responded as she stood next to him. He returned Oliver Toa carrier his motions, being deliberate and trained now that he had received more experience. It was as they went on Tath Trail together that they fell into an easy rhythm, strolling side by side, but not touching. Each stride was a choice. Each instant was a beginning. There were no promises, no fairy tales. It was just a choice that this time was real. Good day, cherished reader. Sleeve your thoughts in the comments section if you were moved by the trip that Mia and Ethan took, the difficulties they encountered, and the way that little Oliver changed their lives. This is a story of new beginnings and second chances.